From 1925 to 1975, we found a certain stability in our rate of incarceration across the nation. For nearly 50 years, the rate of incarceration didn't fluctuate much above 110 to 120 per 100,000. And in 1975, our prison population stood at 241,000. Now we are talking about, in just a matter of 3 to 4 decades later, we are at 2.2 to 2.3 million.
The United States prison population skyrocketed over the last 40 years because of a change in sentencing practices and change in structures at the state and at the federal level, an adoption of mandatory minimum sentences, which moves away from individualized sentences for defendants depending on the circumstances of the offense. Mandatory minimums tie the judge's hands and require people convicted of certain offenses to be subjected to a specific term of years during incarceration. There's also been a range of other practices that have lengthened the term of confinement for people who are incarcerated. So truth in sentencing practices, which require people to serve at least 85% of their time. 3 strikes and you're outlaws or habitual offender statutes in some states. It's not just 3 strikes and you're out, it's 2 strikes and you're out. So on your second felony offense, you may be subjected to a life prison term or a very long prison term, a minimum of 25 years before you're eligible for release.
The phrase, "get tough on crime," is among the easiest ways to generate immediate political capital. The United States leads the world in locking up its citizens. The only 2 nation states that come close are Russia and Rwanda. And the remaining nation states of the world are nowhere close. The United States is about 750 or so per 100,000. Russia and Rwanda are in the 650 per 100,000 rate. And the other nation states of the world are generally around between 250 and 350, if not less.
The real reason why we've seen a significant increase over the last 40 years in incarceration rates is because of policy. It's not really about crime. I mean, certainly in the 80s, the early 80s, we saw an uptick in particularly violent crime, and there was a political concern about that. And so the response was incarceration and more punishment, not investment in, alternatives or prevention tactics. So that had stuck, that response though has stuck around and became very popular, politically popular. And so we saw politicians campaigning on being tough on crime. And so over the years, that's just been how politicians have operated. Adding a mandatory minimum to the sentence for a drug offense or making that mandatory minimum tougher has just been the political reality, instead of really sitting back and thinking about, is this really what we need? Is this really going to solve our drug use problems or drug abuse problems or violent crime issues by just making sentences longer and longer?
I will just tell you that I believe there are too many people being sent to prison. In Ohio, 5,000 people a year come to our prisons that have never been, ever, currently or in their entire life, arrested, indicted, or convicted of any violence. Do we want to invest our money in prisons for non-violent offenders, or do we want to make fewer dollars go much further in a community setting where they're much more effective? And I like the latter.
Since the 1970s, and over the course of 3 and almost 4 decades, we have engaged in a breathtaking, numbing commitment, very punitive commitment to expand and grow our prison populations across every state in the nation. The reality is that 1 in 36 adults in the United States have had a prison experience, are either having or have had a prison experience. And those are daunting numbers, and they carry very tangible and very real consequences.